Restream shows us. Good morning, everyone. We are live on the Rebel Roundtable. Thank you for being here on another fabulous Friday morning. And today I'm super excited. It's going to be a totally nerdy conversation as usual because I have Stuart Berman here. And he's the co-founder of RSA Risk Management and Investigations. And we're talking about hidden digital assets, which I think is a fascinating topic. So welcome, Stuart. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit, your co-founded RSA investigation asset, all these different things. What do you actually do? Like, what's your day-to-day look like?
Okay, so our work is mostly that of a forensic accounting firm.
Okay.
And basically in that we have two verticals. We do litigation support work, and the second one is corporate investigations and fraud examinations. In the area of corporate investigations and fraud examinations, we're really conducting a fraud examination for embezzlement, defalcation, and misappropriation of funds. And here's my fun fact. I know we're supposed to be fun. Every company that we've been in with more than 50 employees, we found something.
That does not surprise me at all, to be
And
honest.
usually some form of embezzlement. It might be something as small as credit card, purchase card, unauthorized purchases, personal purchases, all the way up through. We've seen several accounts payable fraud schemes. Now, going back to our other vertical where we're doing forensic accounting, we really are different than most forensic accounting firms in that we had a lot of litigation support to try and uncover all of the hidden assets. Most of our work is in three different areas: post-judgment collection, hidden asset investigations. The second one is in marital law, where one spouse, and by one spouse, I mean the husband, is
Stuart. Yep.
Okay, for every 25 cases we have one where the wife might be dissipating the asset. So it's not true that it's the husband.
Yeah.
But it just seems to shake out that way. One spouse is dissipating the assets, making an effort to conceal or spend down the marital estate. And the last area where we do a lot of work is bankruptcy. With fraudulent transfers, fraudulent conveyances, which really is not much different than the marital estate.
Right.
This is just the bankruptcy estate. And the same type of games that you would see people go through, the hoops and hurdles to conceal, that you would see in marital law, you see the same in bankruptcy law.
It's funny, now that you said bankruptcy, you could go on a whole other nerdy route because that's my first love is bankruptcy law, but we won't torture everybody with long bankruptcy discussions. You used to be a special agent, correct? Your background was with FBI, right?
You are correct. I am a retired federal agent. I spent over 20 years with the U.S. General Services Administration, Office of Inspector General, and with that, an inspector general is a little bit different than most traditional law enforcement agencies in that, like a DEA or an FBI, they're only going to work criminal cases.
Okay.
And at an inspector general, we're going to work criminal, civil, and administrative, which is great because the truth of the matter is sometimes you work a contract fraud case.
Right.
And some of these False Claims Act cases can be huge. Our average key tam case, the economic damages, not the contract size, the economic damages to the U.S. government, namely the U.S. General Services Administration, were somewhere between $300 and $750 million.
Crazy.
And harm to the government. So in doing that, I think we developed a whole bunch of additional skills.
Yeah.
We all became data analysts. I became the biggest spreadsheet nerd on the planet.
We have so many things in common, Stuart. Okay,
Because
so let's get into some of this. Like, what are hidden assets? What are digital assets? What are you talking about when you say hidden and digital?
okay, so that's a great question, and I want to tell you what they are, and then go back and tell a story if I may.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so we see today a lot of digital assets are assets that you can actually purchase through the blockchain.
Yep.
And these things would be like maybe digital works of art, digital coins. They even have like digital conference rooms where conferences can be held.
Really?
Yeah, we are really living in the digital world. So you see things like digital works of art where they can come up with a work of art and it will be numbered. They'll only make so many of them so that they create the supply, and the demand should exceed the supply and drive up the price. Um, but these digital assets they really started quite a few years ago. And where I first started seeing them, believe it or not, video games. And I
Okay.
know it can go down a huge nerdy path
Mhm.
in video games, but there are assets you could buy today, whether it's swords in World of Warcraft, or planets in Entropia, or
Yep.
weapons. Um, but I like to tell a story. This goes back to, I think, right around the early 2000s, somewhere around 2005. There
Mhm.
was a B-list actor and a total gamer who lived for playing games. And
Okay.
his name was John Jacobs.
Okay.
And he took a second mortgage out on his house. And out of that mortgage, he took $200,000 and he bought a planet in Entropia.
Okay.
So now some of these gamers are they're quite talented. They're artists, they're graphic
Yeah.
designers.
Yeah.
And in that, what he created were three different things on this planet. He
Mhm.
created a nightclub called Club Never Die.
Okay.
And in there, you could buy virtual drinks
Okay.
and virtual sodas. And there was, I know this is hard to believe, there was even product placement. So if you were buying a can of Coca Cola, he was making money. He was generating revenues off the drink sale and the product placement. So yes,
I don't
we are
find that
living in.
so crazy because I met my husband online playing video games and MMORPG back in 2003. So I kind of understand what you're talking about. But yeah, okay, keep going. All
So
of these.
he also created a coliseum for sporting events.
Okay. Yeah.
And he created a shopping mall where you could buy virtual clothing.
Okay.
So it turns out that this Club Never Die ends up being extremely, extremely profitable. And the revenues he generates turns out to be somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000 in revenues a year.
Yep.
Now, in the video game system, as you could well imagine, this has been overlooked by our federal government. So, in terms of income, it's reporting to the Internal Revenue Service.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this individual who's making about $250,000 a year. Um, he holds this for about 5 years, and then I think he sells this somewhere in the area of 1.2 million dollars. I'm not
Okay.
sure to the actual figure. So he earns over $1 million in revenue, and he has approximately $1 million in capital gains.
Mm-hmm.
And what does the gaming community find out? And it's in the magazines and it's in the
Yeah.
papers
Yeah.
that there's profitability in virtual assets.
Yep.
So let's jump to the year let's jump to 2024, 2025.
Okay.
So what we start seeing in marital law is we're seeing that those who are looking to conceal assets have a new playground.
Mm-hmm.
Because, unless you know someone is a gamer, and more specifically what game they're playing,
Right.
if they purchase those assets and they purchase it with an undisclosed account on their financial affidavit, so
Mm-hmm.
we have no knowledge of that account, um, you have no trail from which to begin.
Right. It's
Now,
off the grid, kind of like off the viewpoint. But okay, so
now let's add another layer,
yeah.
because if we're nerding, we have to nerd out 100%. So
Yep.
now, if there's an undisclosed account and money gets transferred to a cryptocurrency wallet, and cryptocurrencies are now used to buy the virtual asset, the game,
Mm-hmm.
the virtual asset in the game. So now we have a hard time finding the initial trail, and we have a hard time finding the purchase in the game.
Right.
Now I have to take it one step further, because this is just what we this is what we do. A game manufacturer, what we call an original equipment manufacturer, OEM, they
Yep.
usually have several games, and they will let you trade virtual assets between their games.
Oh, interesting.
So you can move out from one game into another game.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to that, there are exchanges
Mm-hmm.
where, let's say, you wanted to trade, $300,000 worth of planets in Entropia for
Right.
$300,000 worth of swords, in World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place where this can get done.
Yep.
So now you start moving money from game to game, which, of course, in the world of money laundering, we would call that layering.
Okay.
You're layering the transactions. So, this has become a very, very difficult place when it comes to finding hidden assets.
Right.
Now, there are the traditional methods of us finding hidden assets. We work very, very closely with attorneys during the discovery period. Of course, we want all checking accounts, all savings accounts, all stock brokerage accounts, all wealth management accounts, all what you call credit card
All
accounts,
credit card statements. Yeah. Yeah.
and we will OCR those
Uh-huh.
using a program, and then we will convert them and drop it into Excel, where we will quickly begin to categorize transactions
Mm-hmm.
and identify payees and identify transfers. And using pivot tables, we can quickly identify intra-account transfers and inter-account
Yeah.
transfers, and then compare those to what was disclosed on the financial affidavit.
So then on your red flags, like what make your investigator spidey sense go off when we're talking about red flags? If you see someone they're paying for a video game or they're paying for some type of service, and is that a red flag then to you? Is that how it kind of starts the path?
That is an immediate red flag. And so, with that, we want to work closely with the attorney, and especially in discovery,
Mm-hmm.
and share our ideas about requests to produce. Um, when
Okay.
it comes to cryptocurrencies, if we don't know a wallet, we are
Mm-hmm.
going to want to look at the top 5 cryptocurrency exchanges, and seek what you call it, subpoenas, to determine accounts and trades and wallets and movements. And from there, we could begin the process and then do a P&L, a purchase and loss, with
Do
any type
you
of.
find those top 5 exchanges that you're looking at cooperate fairly
So
easily with the subpoena?
yes, what I am talking about is the top 5 U.S.
Yeah.
exchanges.
Got it. Okay.
So if we're looking at foreign exchanges, now we have to work with a foreign attorney.
Yep.
Um, by that I mean an attorney that lives in that venue.
Right. That understands the laws and the what they can and can't do in that. jurisdiction. Yeah.
Exactly. So, starting and then the attorney-client interview is
Uh-huh.
so important today. It just is. Finding out if they've ever purchased a hidden asset together. You know,
Mm-hmm.
does the person in question, do they accept cryptocurrencies as payment
Yep.
for the business they have?
Yep.
And we're finding that a lot too. I mean, even some of the largest law firms will
Yes.
accept it. I don't know how they mitigate price risk,
Yes.
but they do. Um, Finding out if that person, especially in marital law, if that person is a gamer and what game, and do you know if that person's ever purchased what you call it, a virtual asset in that game? You
It's so
know,
fascinating to me because you're saying marital, but then I switched to bankruptcy because that's what my practice area is. And bankruptcy trustees, like 5 years ago, were starting to ask in California, especially about crypto or wallets and that kind of thing. And it's kind of worked its way across the country. But I don't think any of them, and if they're watching, sorry, my bankruptcy attorney friends whose trustees may be watching, but asking about video games, if they look at the bank statement, they see video games and talking about virtual assets. There really isn't anything on the bankruptcy schedules. There's like a miscellaneous category, but there's not like a digital asset or that kind of asset category. So that's very interesting. Yes.
along the same lines, we all, if we can get them, we always want to see tax returns,
Okay.
and uh, preferably uh, tax return transcripts that came
Yep.
from the IRS,
Yep.
because all too often we get a tax return, but it's not the one that was actually filed.
Which is
So,
scary in and of itself. But yes, the transcripts themselves are better evidence generally because then you know it was submitted. So, what does the tax return tell you from the investigative side? I know it tells me as a bankruptcy attorney. What does it tell you from the investigative side?
we want to see other assets. We
Mhm.
want to see profit and loss and from the sources derived. So if they are making a disclosure, on the proper forms, that might give us a clue that it came from a hidden asset.
Mhm.
And then we begin down that trail. And
Okay.
and we have worked where, we've gone from one video game to the next with subpoenas because of trades, because of movement. So it really is a trail that you start down, and
Mhm.
you want to work very, very quickly, because we know that discovery is a period of time.
Do you find, because I get this question a lot with lawyers, is they don't actually understand what like NFTs are and they don't understand what blockchain is. Do you find yourself being like a rudimentary trainer sometimes of what those things are?
Not only do not only do I find myself being the coach there,
Yeah.
but we've started doing CLEs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've tried to come up with analogies
Yeah.
that are very, very simple analogies. The blockchain is open. It's free to see. You
Mm-hmm.
can trace, if you have some tools, you could trace transactions, and you know
What
a
kind of
transaction
tools?
on the
Like,
blockchain.
yeah. How does that happen? What kind of tools are tracing these transactions in the blockchain?
Okay, so we have we have colleagues who work for us, and they use several, but probably the one we use the most is Chainalysis.
Okay.
There are several different tools. The licensing is expensive.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting though how industries develop off of this, like being a virtual lawyer and being having the analysis, all the things that get generated by new technology and new things that are out there. So
I mean, the change is credible, incredible.
yeah.
If someone would have told me 15 years ago that you can monetize making a living by producing YouTube videos, I would have been, no, that can't happen. And maybe even 10 years,
Yeah.
if you could monetize these new apps called TikTok and
Hmm.
Instagram, and fully monetize it, and make a rather large living doing it, I would say, this is insanity. This
Hmm.
really can't happen.
And now
But
it's what all the kids want to do these days. That's like their number one job category in schools. They want to be a
that's
YouTuber.
all they want to do. But when it comes to blockchain,
Yeah.
you know, a code moves from one computer to the next,
Hmm.
from a starting destination to an ending destination. And they're called nodes, and sometimes there's mixers which will send it off in a different direction, but it will hit the end wallet rather quickly. A transaction from New York to Singapore could actually just be seconds or minutes. And the way I like to explain this when I do CLEs is, in high school I was in the track team,
Hmm.
and I ran the 4x100 relay, and runner number one and the starting blocks holding the baton, that baton is your code.
Yep.
That is your wallet and your code, and that's your multi-digit code to get started.
Yep. And that
And
gets
you
turned
come
off
up to
at.
runner number two,
Yep.
that's a computer node. You're just passing it along to be taken along the way. And finally gets to the leg,
Hmm.
runner number four, who takes the code across the finish line, which is the final destination.
Okay.
And because this is public, the people who are at a track meet sitting in the stands watching it, those are the people who would be watching blockchain and something move from point A to point B through a series of nodes. So, the cryptography codes, it sounds all complicated. It's a relay race.
Yep. Yeah. And it's all visible if you know
It's
where to look, if you know how to find it. Yeah.
and once we find that starting wallet, that's where we find if someone's making purchases of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and
Yep.
other type of virtual assets, through cryptocurrencies.
Yep.
So follow the blockchain, follow the destination, follow things coming back, ownership, and it's simple accounting. It's honestly, if things have already occurred, you do a profit and loss statement, and
Hmm.
if something is sitting in a wallet, which I never ever recommend ever at any time, then a valuation would be
Yep.
performed.
Yep. It's interesting. So a couple years ago, when a lot of the Celsius bankruptcy and some of those exchange bankruptcies were coming out, it was amazing to me how many people had money sitting in those accounts and thinking it was safe and thinking that and it got locked up for a couple of years. Even like the Gemini earn funds got locked up for a lot of people. And it's interesting how many people don't understand the technology that are trying to dabble in it. And so, do you find that there's the very sophisticated people hiding things, and then there's the dabblers?
That 100%. The very very sophisticated people, um, things are much more complicated
Yeah.
because there are three different types of wallets. There's an exchange wallet that they provide you. There's an electronic wallet that you could plug in, like on your phone
Yeah.
or a desktop. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the ultra safe wallet,
Hard wallets.
which
Yeah.
which coders do. They go in and they code. They usually write a code on a piece of paper. They code in their transaction and they code out. So they're in and out so quickly that they need not be concerned about hacking or safety.
Yeah.
So those coders, these what I like to call paper wallets. It's funny, we're in a digital society with cybersecurity, and yet the safest of the wallets seems to be the one on a piece of paper that you have to code in and out. But yes, we see different levels of security here. And when something is moving along the blockchain, there's no concern really for security.
Right.
It has a starting point and has a destination. If something is sitting in an unsecure wallet, that could be hacked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming back to the cases we find. That's where we find, theft and loss of digital assets,
Mm-hmm.
theft and loss of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up another point. As long as we're here, it's separate, it's different, but we've seen an absolutely tremendous rise in the number of cases of false cryptocurrency pig butchering schemes.
Okay, explain that. What does that look like?
Okay, so the old pig butchering scheme would be that you would bring a schemer, a con artist would bring an investment to someone, and they would show them a little bit of a profit, and even let them enjoy a little bit of the profit. Then they would ask for more money and more money. So essentially, they're fattening the pig for the kill. So if they start out with $5,000, they worked it up to the point where they're having you empty out your 401k for $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then they disappear.
Yep. Okay.
Well, because of people's desire to learn today about cryptocurrencies, and people knowing that basically Bitcoin went from 1 cent to $1, and then to $97,000 per Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as humans, we're imperfect, and we can be very greedy. Yeah. So you see that greed, and you want to make money quickly, and everything our parents have always said about making money quickly is it's true. If it's too good to be true, don't do it. So how we usually see these false cryptocurrency pig butchering schemes, and they are advanced.
Mm-hmm.
That usually elderly men are targeted,
and
they will usually receive text messages on their cell phone or text messages through WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have been deemed in the cyber universe that I'm an elderly man, because I get them too. They hit me up all the time, and I'm like, I'm always like, good try, Fisher, and then delete them out. But
that's interesting.
They'll prey on their loneliness, and it's almost, and they'll send the picture. It's almost always, hey, is this Alice? Alice, this is Debbie.
Right.
And then the person will say, no, this is not Alice. It's Robert. Hi, Robert. I'd love to be friends with you. Yep. And then shortly after that, they'll send the picture.
Yep.
And the picture they send is almost always of a beautiful young Asian girl.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the conversation goes from there, and the young, beautiful, Asian girl will usually tell the mark or the subject that I trade cryptocurrencies for a living. I've made millions of dollars. I'm only willing to accept so many people. Then they'll take 5,000 from them.
Right. And it builds up from there. Yeah.
Now, what we've seen is that we're working with pretty advanced groups here, where they've come up with their own iPhone apps, Android apps, so that they have a trading platform that you're looking at on your cell phone. So you put the 5,000 down, and a day later you see you have like $3,000 profit already.
Right. You're like, oh, cool. I should put more money into this. But yeah,
I should put more money in it. And you're looking at this trading platform, and they look really legit. They've done such a great job. You'll see the Dow Jones on there. You'll see, the S&P 500. It looks like you're looking at a desktop app for any of the big firms, whether it's like a Merrill Lynch or an Edward
Right.
D. Jones,
Yeah.
it looks like you're looking at a legitimate market app with up-to-date minutes and up-to-date market news. And you believe that you are buying cryptocurrencies or virtual assets,
Right.
and
Yep.
and you're not.
I feel like we could go on all day on some of this stuff too, because we didn't even get into all the bankruptcy fraudulent transfer stuff. However, I do try to keep us to 30 minutes because that's most of my attention span. But this is really cool. Thank you so much. First of all, how can people find you? Where can they locate you? And if you want them to find you, how do they find you?
Sure. Very simply, Stuart, Stuart, at rsarisk.com or rsarisk.com on the web. And just so you know, RSA, how we came up with our acronym, it
Mm-hmm.
stands for Retired Special Agents.
Okay. That's okay, cool.
My business partner was at the U.S. Secret Service. I was at the Inspector General. We have three associates who came from IRS,
Okay.
criminal investigations, from FBI, from other IGs. So we've put together a talent pool of people who came from federal agencies, testifying experience, courtroom
Yep.
experience in handling evidence, and and of course diligence and trying to find these digital assets today.
Very cool. Well, I will make sure your contact information gets in the show notes as soon as we're done streaming here. To wrap up, we do have the Rebel Roundtable Anthems playlist because I like to be different and have a whole playlist of things that are rebellious. What is your go-to anthem for channeling your inner rebel?
Okay, for my inner rebel, it's Nearly Lost You by the Screaming Trees.
Okay. Is there anything special about it? Like, why is that your anthem?
I think it's just an anthem has to have a driving electric guitar.
Okay. I agree.
And it also, if you're gonna have a driving electric guitar, you always have to have vocals that sit on top of the music.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise they get lost.
Yep.
So I mean that's why you look at rock bands, you look like a Freddie Mercury with Queen or Robert Plant with Led Zeppelin. Those voices sat on top of the music. You always heard them, always carried the tune.
Awesome. Well, I will get that added to the Spotify playlist and get that added out there too and share that. Thank you, Stuart, for your time this morning and talking through very nerdy things with me that I find fascinating. And I will see everyone next Friday at 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific for the next Rebel Roundtable. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.